Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. This is Token Guy. Today we're going to be talking about charting and your entry or exit in and out of a coin when DLMMing on Meteora. And so whenever I look at charts, I try to keep it pretty simple. I'm not someone who has a bunch of advanced charts. I think that it needs to just be something fairly simple when looking to enter and exit a coin. Whenever we enter and exit, you could do this similarly when trading a coin, but we're specifically doing this strategy for DLMMing. And I'll talk a little bit about how we do that. Once you find a coin like this that you look at the volume, you think it's pretty good, 1 hour volume just under $1 million. This is kind of starting to be a mid-market cap coin. The market cap is 22.6. It's got a decent history on it. And so we go ahead and say, okay, I think this is one we're interested in. It looks like based on Twitter and other things that it's a good coin, right? Now, when do we determine when to enter? Well, there's a few things you want to look at. One is volume, right? So you can see there's a lot of volume down here. And then it increased, dipped down a little bit, came up here, dipped down a little bit. And so you do want to see that the volume is pretty good, but you also want to look at what the chart's doing. So I'm going to show you how I draw this out. What I do is I take the horizontal line here, which you can do this on pretty much any sort of chart. And we're just going to look at what the most recent high was. That happens to be right here. And so we're going to draw a line right across the top there. We're then going to go to the most recent low, and we're looking at a significant low here, and we're going to draw this, which is what we would call our support, and this top one is our resistance. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the next significant one, which we can see here, and then we're going to do the same thing one more time down here. We're also going to do one more on the top side right there, and so this is kind of how I chart it. Now, what I basically look for here is that we want to enter into a DLMM when a coin is in an upward trend. So we're not trying to swing trade at all. We are trying to enter into a coin. I actually don't need my headphones on anymore. We're looking at entering into a coin when it's on an uptrend, and we want to catch it moving up, which helps for us in a DLMM pool because then we end up catching it at a point in which it goes up. And then usually we either are seeing it pump up pretty strong, which is really good for us, or we end up being at about the middle of the new range that it's creating, which I'll explain in just a moment. And so if we're looking at this coin, man, and we're watching it here, it just recently hit a local high. So we're waiting for it to dip back down here. And so what I'm watching for, it's already starting to do this, which is good. You can see here it was in a downtrend. We know that because the most recent highs were lower than the previous highs and the lows were lower than the previous lows. We then see that it sat sideways for a little bit before coming back up. It came back up and then started to go sideways again. But you can see here now that this high was higher than the previous. This low is higher than the previous, and same thing here. This high and is higher and low is lower. And so now basically, now that it started to create this uptrend, we want to continue to see the higher highs and lower lows, and we want to see it break above a major previous resistance. And so when we're looking here, this is the next one. This is where it's currently at. This is the next one. And so what we're looking at is previous resistances. If we look back in the chart, you can actually see that there were some previous ones here along with this one. And so if it breaks above this range here, then the next resistance isn't until here. And then there's also one here and here as well. And so basically what we would be looking for is for it to break above this one. And as soon as it does, if it is continuing in this trend, as soon as it broke above there, this high here, then we would enter into it. And basically what we're looking at here is once it breaks above that, we expect it to continue to move upward. Now it may immediately move upward, or it may actually just move up a little bit and then start to come down again and then continue up. As long as we're seeing higher highs and higher lows, we're okay with it dipping back down before it comes back up. That's actually good when we're DLMMing. And so we'll enter into it when it does that. And so as you enter into it, it'll create a new range. And then I'll explain a little bit on how I would then exit. And so that's kind of the general entry for us. We're looking for it to break out above a previous high with a continued uptrend so that we catch it on the way up. And so that way our pool, whenever it's set up, we can show you here. And so whenever you set up a pool, so the idea is that we're setting up a two-sided pool, right? But when we enter in, we're entering in at a point in which the token could go down or up. And so we don't want to enter in a position where the token is constantly or is in a downtrend, because then for most of the time, unless we just happen to see it pump back up, your pool will be sitting in the lower side of your range, which is still good. You'll be earning fees, but you'll basically have to wait and hope for a pump before you're able to get back to your starting line. And so I prefer to get in and have it be moving up. So that way, for most of its life that I'm in the pool, it's actually going to be trending mostly on the upside. Now, it may dip down here a little bit, but mostly on the upside of our pool. That's a more comfortable place to be in. And then if it ends up pumping out of our range, that's fine as well, because we'll end up making fees as well. And so let's say that I'm already in this token. Let's say that I've already bought into it and I have these range set up here. And I'm going to say that this is the range that I have set up. And so for me, whenever I'm looking at this, I'm going to say, okay, I got in maybe around here. Let's just draw a trend line. Let's say that when we were previously looking at it, it broke out above this range here. So we got in here, and then it only came up for a little while and then ended up coming back down. And so we've been ranging this whole time. It came back up. And so because it's created these supports here, and because we want to try to create a good stop loss or a good spot in which we're going to get out of the pool if it ends up dropping too low, this is a pretty significant support here that we see. And there is a smaller one just a little bit below it, but there's really not much more down to here. And so this is a pretty big drop off. And so if I was watching this, I would be happy where it is now. We've been earning fees the whole time. It's now on the way up. We could have even sold up here, but let's say we haven't yet. Then what we would be looking for to exit is for it to either break back up and come out over here, in which we would sell because we'd be at the top end of our range and we would have earned a lot of fees along the way. Or if the token ends up breaking below our range here, then we would also get out. And so basically we watch for it to come down. It might move a little bit, but once it broke down here, this is where we'd really start to watch it in this zone here between these two supports. Once it broke below this one. And then if it continues down and we watch it break below this one, then we'd end up closing it out. And for us, this would be our kind of stop loss area. Even though it may come back up in the future, we're not really betting on that. We're just going to have a strategy to get out whenever we can, based on the kind of strategy and criteria we have set up. And so for me, I'd be looking at this. I would say as soon as it broke below here, I'd go ahead, close out the pool, sell it. I would have probably earned a lot of fees along the way. And so it wouldn't be too big of a loss, or it may even be a break even or slightly positive even as well, depending on how long I was in the pool. And so whenever I do say breakout, whether it's above or below, I'm talking about a candle actually closing. So many times you'll see a live candle will be moving up and down. Sometimes it can drastically move up and down depending on how big the buys and sells are and how frequent they are. But I actually want to see a candle completely close, meaning this candle is still active. It's still within the 1 minute chart, but I'm looking for this candle to actually close pretty strongly below it. Sometimes you might even go to the 5 minute chart and want a 5 minute candle to close before you feel confident in whether it went down below it or not. On a lot of meme coins, especially the small to mid caps, I look at the 1 minute candle though. And if it closes below my range and the candle closes out and starts to do something else with a new candle, then I go ahead and close it and get out. And so that's the gist of how I get in and out of a coin. I do a lot of different checks on which coins I'm looking at based on their narrative, their Twitter activity, their top 10 holder count, the bubble maps, all that kind of stuff is important to look at as to whether you think it's safe to get into a coin or not. Obviously, there's always risk, but we have to mitigate that as best as possible. And then I use the entry and exit plans that I just explained there with my charting. And then I continue to watch that until I decide when to get out. And I'll also be looking at this as well to determine, how far down this is and kind of match it up to the actual charting that I'm looking at here to determine when to get in and out. And then I just come over here and close out the pool.